Hey everybody, it's Rykard here again, back with another black and white Pokemon analysis. Today, we're going to be discussing the crystal Pokemon known as Furiijio. So let's get started by taking a look at its typing, abilities, and stats. So first, I'd just like to point out the fact that this Pokemon has 4 dotted letters in a row in its name, which is just awesome. But anyways, as for the typing, it is a mono ice type, which, as I've said in the previous 2 videos, isn't one of the best monotypings in the world, but it's still pretty good because you do get stab on ice moves. As for the ability, it gets only 1 because it doesn't get an extra one in the Dream World, and this one is Levitate, which is an excellent ability to have because that means you're immune to ground type moves, spikes, and arena trap. So that allows this Pokemon to be able to switch in more freely than it normally would be able to if your opponent was also making use of spikes as entry hazards as opposed to just stealth rocks, which will hurt this Pokemon a lot since it is an ice type that is weak to rock. But as for the stats, it gets 70 HP, 30 defense, and 135 special defense. So as you can see just by these stats, or the defensive stats, this Pokemon can be built to be incredibly specially defensive. But the only risk you have with that is the fact that its regular defense is not going to be that great if you do that. So I guess for the majority of EV spreads that would be put onto a Pokemon like this that will be running a more defensive set, you're going to treat it somewhat like Blissey in the sense that you're going to put a lot into HP and a lot into physical defense, so that'll hopefully at least balance out a little bit the ridiculous amount of special defense that it naturally has. But as for its attacking stats, it gets 50 physical attack, which isn't a lot, but it does get 95 special attack, which is very usable, and this Pokemon learns a bunch of ice moves that are special, and a couple of other really useful moves that are also special attacks. So this Pokemon can definitely prove to be a pretty powerful special attacker, and that is only benefited even more by the 105 base speed that it gets, meaning that this Pokemon could be incredibly fast and incredibly powerful if you put a lot of EVs into its special attack and such. So these stats are kind of weird, I think, but it shows that this Pokemon is capable of doing a few things really effectively. And with that, let's take a look at a few sets that this Pokemon can most likely make use of. So this first set is going to demonstrate some advantages that this Pokemon gets as some kind of physical or special wall as compared to other well-known special or physical walls in the game. But first we're going to give it a bold nature to increase its physical defense and decrease its physical attack, and then obviously we're going to be using the ability Levitate because that is the only ability that it gets. As for the EVs, we're going to put 252 into HP to max out your HP, 252 into physical defense to max out your physical defense, and then force for speed just to give you that one more speed point and that slight chance to outspeed something that may have the same base speed as you. And since we are going to be a pretty bulky set, we're going to make use of the item leftovers to recover a little bit of HP at the end of every turn. As for the moveset, the first one can either be one of 2 things. The reason why you would use Reflect is because you might want to have some team support by obviously setting up a Reflect, making all physical attacks that your opponent would use not as effective, or if you want this Pokemon specifically to be setting up defensively, you could go go use Acid Arbor so that it can increase its own physical defense by 2 stages each time it's used. As for the next couple moves, you're going to have Rapid Spin, which is very useful since that'll be able to obviously get rid of entry hazards that are so prominent in standard play, and it works out especially well for this Pokemon since it is weak to stealth rocks, so being able to Rapid Spin those away allows this Pokemon to come in a few times in the battle and not have to worry about them except for the time that you obviously switch in to use Rapid Spin. As for the next move, we're going to be using Ice Breath because it's an awesome new Ice type TM that has 40 base power but always lands a critical hit. So it's a great move if your opponent is trying to set up defensively, or especially defensively because this is a special move. and it'll break through all those stat boosts it got to special defense and do standard damage to it, or whatever that damage would normally be in the case that it didn't have any special defense boost at all. And lastly, we're going to use the move Recover so that we can obviously heal up our HP and allow us to survive longer in battle, to potentially rapid spin more and wall other Pokemon with your high defense after acid armor or something to that effect. This next set is going to be Furiijio's variation on the pressure band sets I've been putting in a couple of my previous videos. But for the nature, ability, and EVs, they're going to be the same as with the previous set, so that you can be able to maximize this Pokemon's ability to wall physical and special attacks. As for the item, since this is a pressure band set, we're going to be using Pressure Band to increase the effectiveness of your trapping move known as Bind. And if you don't know what Pressure Band does, basically it takes a move like Bind, which traps your opponent and deals end turn damage equal to a 16th of your opponent's health, and bumps up that end turn damage to be 1/8 of your opponent's health. And since trapping moves like Bind now are always in effect from 4 to 5 turns as opposed to the 2 to 5 turns in the previous generation, your opponent is guaranteed to lose half of its health because of the trapping effect of Bind and the increased damage given the pressure, or the increased damage of Bind because of Pressure Band. Obviously, that won't be the case if they have leftovers, because obviously it'll be doing less than that because they'll be recovering HP, yada yada yada. But you know what I mean. But to work in conjunction with Bind, we're going to be using Toxic, because that'll deal increased damage every turn while your opponent is stuck in place because of Bind. And obviously this won't work on a Steel type, so just make sure those aren't what you end up trapping, because obviously Toxic won't work on it. As for the next move, we're going to be using Confuse Ray to basically make your opponent completely crippled. It won't be able to switch out, it will be taking damage every turn from Toxic, and it will have a 50-50 chance of attacking because of how Confuse Ray works. So the opponent of this Pokemon will be taking a ton of damage, some of which might even be caused by itself because of Confuse Ray. And then the last move in the set is going to be Recover to obviously keep your HP up while your opponent's is slowly dropping from the set. And I do realize that Taunt is something that this set is obviously weak to, but you just gotta hope that whatever you trap with Bind isn't going to be a Pokemon that also carries Taunt. And generally there aren't a lot on your opponent's team. Generally it's usually a lead that has Taunt, but there are others that could pack it as well. But it's just something to be mindful of as you're trying to execute this set. As for this last set, it's going to make use of this Pokemon's great speed and good special attack. So first, we're going to give it a timid nature to increase its speed but decrease its physical attack. We're going to be using the ability Levitate, obviously, because it's the only ability this Pokemon gets. And for the EVs, we're going to put 4 into HP to give you 1 more hit point, 252 EVs into special attack to give you your max special attack possible with a timid nature, and then 252 EVs into speed to give you your max speed possible. As for the item, we're going to be using a Power Herb, and that item is meant to work with the move Solar Beam, because this Pokemon learns it leveling up for some odd reason. I can't think of a reason why an Ice-type Pokemon would level up to learn Solar Beam, but because Solar Beam requires you to charge or store energy for 1 turn, it makes you fairly weak. So what Power Herb does is it gets rid of the charge turn from Solar Beam for 1 use of Solar Beam, because obviously the herb is consumed after you use it once. So this allows this Pokemon to deal an incredibly powerful Grass-type move without having to obviously wait a turn that it normally would have to wait to set up. As for the other moves, we're going to be using Ice Breath, which I talked about before, Flash Cannon, because it's a really good base power special Steel type move that can potentially hit things that your other moves might not be able to hit for super effective or neutral damage. And then we're going to be using Hidden Power Electric, because generally electric types like to carry the Hidden Power Ice, So obviously the ice types would probably want to carry a hidden power electric, since it does give you really good type coverage between the ice and electric. And then obviously solar beam and flash cannon are going to help that out even more by giving you a variety of different types to attack from and hurt your opponent. And because of her high speed and high special attack, you'll be able to do a lot of damage with both of those, or with all of those moves. But that's pretty much it for this Pokemon. To be honest, when I first saw it, I had no idea what the heck it was, and then I realized that those little bead things are like a mouth, and it's a very sad Pokemon because it's frowning, which is unfortunate, but I hope that it gets happy at some point. But that's pretty much it for this set. So I will see you guys in my next video. So take care and goodbye.